Stay tuned for a meeting of the Calabasas City Council. The meeting will be broadcast using Zoom and the city CTV Channel 3. Members of the City Council may teleconference into the meeting without noticing or posting an agenda at their teleconference location. Besides the live TV and Zoom broadcast, the live stream of the meeting may be viewed online at cityofcalabasas.com/CTV Live. If you want to provide public comment, press Raise Hand if you're using Zoom or *9 if you're joining by phone. Just unmute yourself by pressing *6. Say your name and the city you live in. You'll be allowed 3 minutes to address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Council. If the power or internet goes out lasting more than 15 minutes, or if there's some event that prevents the council from meeting or prevents you from providing public comment, then the meeting will be adjourned. Any items noticed as public hearings will be rescheduled to the next regular meeting of the City Council. Any other agenda items the council has not taken action on will be placed on a future agenda. Now, a meeting of the Calabasas City Council.
Good evening and welcome to the May 10th, 2022 Calabasas City Council special meeting this evening. I am joined tonight by Mayor Pro Tem David Shapiro, Council members Peter Kraut, Alicia Weintraub, and James Bazagian. And this evening we're joined by Deputy City Attorney Effie Margolin. Welcome, Effie. This evening the Pledge of Allegiance will be held by our own Chief Financial Officer, Ron Allers.
Please rise.
Thank you.
Place your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ron. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, Madam Clerk, please proceed with the roll call vote.
Councilmember Bosajian.
Aye.
Councilmember Kraut.
Aye.
Councilmember Weintraub.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Yes.
Mayor Maurer.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Mayor.
All right. This evening, we're going to start off our meeting with a special presentation by the Las Virginis Municipal Water District. I think at this point, everybody knows that our water shortage has at a critical time. And this city, the surrounding cities, along with our water provider, the Las Virginis Municipal Water District, are going to be taking severe actions. And we hope our residents will join us in doing our part in conserving as much water as possible. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce the Water District's General Manager, Dave Pedersen. Welcome, Dave, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say and having a discussion about what we can do to do our part.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, and good evening, council members. My name is Dave Pedersen. I'm the General Manager of Las Virginis Municipal Water District, and I'm going to give you an update on the statewide drought that we're facing. I'll talk about the impacts to us here locally in our region. I'll talk a little bit about the emergency actions that we've taken to date, and then give a bit of a preview of what might be in store for us. I did want to mention we are having a town hall meeting on this tomorrow, and that's going to be at 6 p.m. And actually, you can register on our website at LVMWD.com. We actually have more than 1,400 people registered already for tomorrow. So I'm going to try to keep my remarks a little bit on the short side because I don't want to monopolize your meeting, and I do want to encourage people to attend tomorrow. But for tonight, I did want to go over a few important things. I had slides, but actually I think it might just be better for me to talk through it with you. And I will cover some of the material that was in that is included on the slides. As I start, I wanted to just acknowledge one thing that the drought and the measures that we're taking are very severe. And I want each of you to know that I take my job very seriously in being a service provider to the city and to all of the city's residents. And so this, weighs heavily on me, the impact that the drought is having on the community. And, part of the reason I'm briefing you and the reason we're having the town hall meeting is we want to do everything that we can, and I do, that we can soften the impact to us locally. But we are truly faced with an unprecedented situation. We've become somewhat accustomed to drought in California, and we've had repeated droughts, but we've never had a drought quite like this one. And in the water business, we plan normally in a 20 to 30 year time horizon, and we use what we call a drought of record to really guide our planning. Up until now, the drought of record was 1976 and 1977, and that was the worst, most acute drought that we had ever had. This drought, which is not yet over, we're in the third year, has surpassed that drought as being the worst ever in California. So we're faced with really an unprecedented situation. To talk about the impact here locally, I have to talk a little bit about where our water is sourced, and then I'll talk about the challenges with each of those. So in Southern California, there's really two major sources of imported water, and Metropolitan Water District is the regional importer of that water. The first is from the Northern Sierras, and that's the State Water Project. And that is actually that supplies the majority of the water for our area here. The other major source for Metropolitan is the Colorado River and the Colorado River Aqueduct that they own and operate and import water. So together, most areas of Southern California receive some amount of imported water, and they supplement that with local water, which is usually groundwater. One of the biggest challenges that we have in our part of Southern California and LA County is that our area does not have local water. We don't have groundwater. The little bit of groundwater that we have is really, really poor quality and not suitable for drinking. And so because of that, our area has always been more vulnerable to drought than other areas of Southern California. And it's really just the nature of our supply mix that we're so reliant on imported water. The current situation that we're facing is that we are receiving very, very little, a historically low amount of water from the State Water Project. We started the year with actually a 0% allocation on the State Water Project. And just to explain a little bit how the project works, it's owned and operated by the state of California. There are 29 contractors that have contracts with the state to receive water. And there's an amount that is contracted for each of them. Metropolitan is actually the largest of all of them, and they're entitled to almost 50% of the water from the State Water Project. This year, I mentioned the allocation, which is the percent of contract amount that they receive, is 5%, which is very low. It's never been that low. Last year, it was also 5%. The year before that, 2020, it was 20%. So when you put together those 3 years, 20%, 5, and 5, there has never been in the history of the State Water Project a 3-year period that was that low. And so we're faced with making some really significant and impactful decisions to stretch the supply that we do have available and to forestall the potential for more severe water restrictions that could come later in the year as early as September. In terms of water usage, what we're really trying to do is preserve and protect water for human needs, for bathing, cooking, cleaning, sanitation, and the like. Our focus has really been on looking to conserve water outdoors. Our board began taking drought actions almost a year ago, and we implemented what we call a water shortage contingency plan. So all water agencies in California, we have these plans, And the plan is intended for times like this, when water is in short supply, that we can implement an escalating series of actions to respond. And they're phased. They have phases or stages, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're currently in what we call stage 3 of our plan, which is an emergency stage. Our board actually declared a local state of emergency back in November of last year. So we've been in a state of emergency for 6 months. The emergency that comes with drought is sort of unlike other emergencies. When we have fire and earthquake, it's very apparent, the emergency and the effect and the need. But with drought, it's kind of different. It's slow and you don't see the immediate impact. But we are clearly beginning to feel that. And last week, or was it the week before now, Metropolitan has taken action to implement some of the toughest watering restrictions in Southern California, which are affecting about 6.6 million people, including all of us in the Las Virginis service area. So I want to talk about that just for a second, because it is important to point out that drought does not affect everyone and everywhere equally. And so you will find anomalies where a certain area is affected more than another. And it always raises questions why. And naturally, when we're in an area that's affected more severely, it's important to understand that. Metropolitan's system largely works based on having two major sources that are hydrologically independent. So they have water that comes from the Northern Sierra, and then they have the Colorado River that comes from the Colorado Rockies. So the idea is when one is in short supply, that they can lean on the other. And that is what Metropolitan is doing right now. They are leaning on the Colorado River water supply. The challenge that we face is we can receive very, very little Colorado River water supply in our area. We actually, in terms of numbers, we get only a very small fraction of our water from the Colorado River. And it's primarily due to geography, where we are located, the distance from where that Colorado River supply comes in, and the need for pumping that water up the Sepulveda Pass and through into the West Valley. Because of that, we're more impacted by drought. I want to mention just briefly, and I don't want to go into great detail about some of the watering restrictions, but we do have what we call a budget-based water rate system, where every customer has a unique water budget that's based on their property. And so what we have done is we have what we call a drought factor, where we can shrink those water budgets when we're in a time of shortage. And we initially did shrink them by first 25% and more recently by 50%. The focus is really trying to conserve water and focus outdoors, focus on ratcheting back irrigation and cutting the number of days per week that you irrigate, and also the amount of time that you let your irrigation system run. And then what I am expecting is making a recommendation to our board to implement the Metropolitan actions, which would be a 1 day a week watering schedule. And that would be coming before our board next week, and it would be scheduled for implementation beginning on June 1st. So I think what I'd like to do is stop there, because I suspect many of you have questions, and I want to leave time for that and be able to be responsive. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I know this is an extraordinary time for you and the agency, and to make time is much appreciated, and we will be mindful in our questions so that you can probably go back to work. Mari, are there any questions from members of the public to start?
Madam Mayor, I do not see any hands up, but I see council members with hands up. And so
I see them too. So I will go to council members. I'll start with Councilmember Bazagian.
Thank you. Two questions, Dave, for you. First, has there been any movement at either at the statewide level or of local governments that you're aware of to enact prospective ordinances and statutes that limit planting only native plants to the area? Because it seems to me that part of our problem is that we have non-native plantings all over the place, and they just suck up the water. They take, obviously, they're not native to the area, so they need extra pampering. Has there been any legislation proposed that you're aware of at any level?
Not exactly as you described, but we do have something called the Model Efficient Landscape Ordinance in California, and it's an ordinance that is aimed at accomplishing what you described, Councilmember Bazagian, but it doesn't quite go as far as what you described, where it requires that it be native landscaping. Essentially, what it does is sort of establishes a water volume or budget for new landscaping, and based on the numbers and the calculations that are done, you can't make it work without limiting the amount of water thirsty plantings that you do. And so you need to plant and focus plantings on California native, but it doesn't go so far as to require California native.
Yeah, I would hope that in the future, maybe the district could creatively suggest that to some of the local governments out here. There are a lot of areas, and I don't mean requiring people to tear up things necessarily, but it just phasing out non-native vegetation. The other questions I have is, and I asked Michael McNutt this last time, I didn't really get an answer that was clear. So I understand that there's like that the state regulations supersede local regulations and HOA regulations regarding letting lawns go brown or having dead vegetation around, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but then when the emergency is done, when everything is lifted, does that legislation also allow the homeowner to say, hey, I don't want to use all this water up, even though we're not in a drought, to try to bring bring my same plants back or plant new plants that are going to take a lot of water? Can someone then leave their lawn brown without fear of having some regulation, some local regulation?
Yeah, good question. And, I have a fact sheet on this very issue. And what I recall, and I just don't recall exactly, but I remember that there are rules related to when you're in a drought emergency and when you're not, and they're intended to protect the homeowner to do the right thing, so to speak. I would have to just double check that fact sheet just to verify that the answer to your question, but I can certainly do that and get right back to you.
Okay, if you could, and maybe the city attorney could also check to see what provisions are in that legislation. It's very important because we go in and out of these droughts, and it actually wastes more water to try to replant everything and get everything back than it would if people were allowed to just leave it the way it is without penalties. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Kraut.
Thank you for that. First of all, I want to apologize. I was the one who led the mayor astray on the mispronunciation of your name. I spelled it correctly, but I pronounced it wrong. I do want to say that as examples of our city, we council members have had many discussions about how we need to do our part. I've already cut my watering back to 1 day a week, and of course, I'm as concerned as many people about how to keep things alive during this time. The question about hand watering trees and such, are there any resources you can point us towards that would help us understand how best to hand water trees and keep them alive during this period?
Yeah, good question. And actually, that's a question we've gotten a number of times. So we are proposing to allow hand watering, and that would be hand watering with a watering can or just simply with your hose with a shutoff nozzle. And there would not be a restriction on hand watering. And the purpose is primarily trees. It really depends. The amount of watering that's needed really depends on the tree species and the maturity. And to be honest, I don't know exactly how much water they would need, but that is something that is on our list of getting some more guidance out. And I'll also say that what we're learning in responding here is that people are really wanting to know, like, what should I do? What can I do? And so questions like this come up, and I think we're trying to respond as quickly as we can. And we're actually working with your staff, Mike Russo, to put together some videos that will actually, in a kind of a very simple format, explain to people, here's what you can do with your tree.
Okay, great. And I do want to remind the public that if they're not aware, that the Las Virgenis Municipal Water District headquarters on Las Virgenis Boulevard has some fabulous examples of native plants that would require a lot less water. And they're all planted out in front, and they're all labeled with their names. So it's a great resource for people that are looking at pulling out some of those thirsty plants and getting through the drought that way. I want to thank you for showing up and sharing with us today, and look forward to your presentation tomorrow.
Thank you.
Councilmember Weintraub.
Thank you, Dave, for being here. I do not envy your position right now. Just a few questions, and I know you're going to go over a lot of them tomorrow, but can you just address the difference with what LADWP announced today with allowing residents 2 days of watering versus what our proposal is with 1 day? Just, I know I've received a bunch of questions about that today.
Good question, and I received the same question. I believe the mayor of Los Angeles did come out and had a press conference earlier, and they opted to go with a little bit different strategy. So the Metropolitan action that was taken actually allowed water agencies, including ours, 2 pathways for compliance. The first being implementing a 1 day a week watering schedule, and actually with that having to enforce that. The second pathway, and that I would describe as sort of like an action-based strategy. So we take this action and we're automatically in compliance. The other strategy is a volumetric approach, where instead of telling us what to do, Metropolitan allocates a volume of water to us, and we actually have the liberty to use it as we like. And I'll say that sounds very attractive, and that actually is more in line with the way I would like to manage water. The problem for us, though, is that volume of water is so low that in my mind it's unworkable. The way they calculated the allocation was based entirely on population. And so for us, it's probably the worst way that it could be calculated, because our region is, comparatively to LA, low in population, large in land area. We have 70,000 people. And so the allocation that we would get through that pathway is much more impactful to our community. Believe it or not, 1 day a week watering is better. Now, the city of Los Angeles is able to make it work for 2 reasons. One is they're much more densely populated, so they have a large population. The other reason is they do have some local supply that they can supplement their allocation with. And that's water from the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which comes from the Owens Valley. And they do have some groundwater. So what they're able to do is take the little bit of water that's allocated, they're able to supplement it with that water that they have, and their plan is to make that work. But I'll tell you, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very challenging for them. The number that they're trying to hit is about 80 gallons per person per day, which is really, really low. The normal household uses about 55 gallons per person per day. So you're talking about 25 gallons per person per day outside, which does not go very far. And so tomorrow we are planning on talking about this and the fact that there are 2 pathways. But our recommendation and our thought in analyzing them is that the 1 day a week strategy is actually a better one for us.
Thank you for that explanation. My other question is for people that have switched to the Rachio system, will you be explaining how many minutes per zone people can water, so that they can reset their devices?
Yeah, we will. And we're also going to do a video on how to do that. I talked with Hidden Hills City Council yesterday, and they had that question as well. How do you program the Rachio controller to accomplish a 1 day a week watering schedule? So we are working on getting that prepared and having a video.
So just last question, because I know we'll get more tomorrow night, but how many minutes a day are we going to be able to water the 1 day a week?
So what we're looking at, we haven't decided that quite yet, but what we're looking at recommending is 8 minutes per station. The one caveat is that if you have really high efficiency systems, they don't deliver the same amount of water. And so they need to be allowed a longer watering time. And so we're still looking at that.
Okay, and actually I have one last question. Hopefully you'll bring it up tomorrow night. You don't even necessarily need to address it now, but a lot of people are asking, you know, why hasn't California invested in desalination plants the way other countries have? You know, we're reading so much about, we have been about Israel and even what cities like Las Vegas have been doing. So just investing in technologies to help us in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question and suggestion. And I do think as a result of what we're experiencing, we really need to look at what is our future and what are we going to invest in. And I think what we're experiencing here illustrates to me that we need to be thinking a lot more boldly about what we do in the future.
Thank you. I'll be tuning in tomorrow night, and just again urging our residents, you need to pre-register for this. So the link has, I believe it's posted on our website. It's on our social media. So, and you'll get a confirmation email, you know, a few seconds after you register, so you know that you have the link. So thanks again, Dave.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Thank you. And thank you, Dave, for being here. A lot of my inquiries or comments maybe have already been covered, but piggybacking off what Alicia was just talking about, I remember it was 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I was with you and the Water District and a group of businesses from, I believe it was Israel, talking about options and ways to protect us in the future, because our council's been talking about this publicly for a long time. So we understand the concern and the difficult and the dangerous position we're in. Couple of quick questions, and you're going to cover them, I'm sure, tomorrow night. They've come to me from residents in the city. One is the ability for incentivizing residents and businesses to transition from regular yards to the drought tolerant and much less water use plants and rocks and so forth. So there was that years ago, and a lot of our residents use those incentives to help transition at least their front yards. Will that be coming forward again? I know there's a little one, but something larger possibly.
Yes, it is available, and that program is offered through Metropolitan, and we offer it in the Water District. I believe it's at $3 a square foot right now, which is pretty good. And we're in a situation right now, unfortunately, where we're not recommending that people do it right now. And the real reason is, as you change out your landscaping, even the California natives, they need water to be established. But that long term, that is a really helpful strategy, is to be moving towards California native. And you know, you can have a garden that's California native and really attractive. And so I do think that's part of our long-term solution. And what I'll do is I'll provide some follow-up info on how people can take advantage of that, what they call turf replacement or landscape transformation rebate.
Great, thank you. And the other question I've gotten a lot, or comment I've gotten a lot, is the concern of our residents, given we are in a wildfire zone, that after a number of months with 100-degree temperature and 1 day a week watering, we're going to then have created a more potentially dangerous condition for our communities.
Yes, and this is a big concern to me as well. And, you know, living through the Woolsey fire and seeing, you know, the devastating impact, it is something that worries me. I did ask Metropolitan to raise this issue with the state, and we've actually, we have a meeting next week to actually talk about this. And our plan is to approach the state about allocating a portion, some water to include under what is considered health and safety deliveries that is for wildfire prevention. And the concept is that in the urban wildland interface that there is landscaping and vegetation that provides a buffer or a protective zone. I'm hopeful that they will be supportive, and so we'll keep pushing for that.
Appreciate it. I appreciate your always keeping the city advised and working with us, and especially in these critical times.
Thank you.
I see one hand from a member of the public, Andy Schrader.
We'll bring them in, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Andy, go ahead, please.
Hi, Andy Schrader. Calling in pretty great concern about the drought. I was listening to the Met meeting yesterday, and one of the last speakers said that we're losing 2 feet of the Colorado River every 9 days at this point. And if it continues through August, we'll lose another half of the river. So we really need to raise the level of our game. There's a ton of grass around the city. I really think we need to set a goal, look at the amount of water that we use as a city, and set a goal to reduce our turf by 20%, reduce by 50% going forward. And I fully support Councilmember Bazagian's native plants, maybe an ordinance to require that going forward for new landscaping. And I'm curious for Dave Peterson, is our representative on the Metropolitan Water District an elected position, so he's accountable to the electorate?
It's an appointed position. So currently the representative for us is Glenn Peterson. He previously served on our board, and so he was an elected board member, but he's currently serving in an appointed capacity representing us.
Okay, thank you.
I see our city manager's hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Dave, thank you so much for taking your time to be here. I know that you and your staff are working tirelessly over the last few weeks to prepare for your own town hall tomorrow. So we appreciate that. As you've met with the other cities, Dave, and I think this goes to Mr. Schrader's question. I know our council has asked this question. What type of recommendation is the district providing in regards to reclaimed water, recycled water, and its use during the drought? As you're aware, we want to do the right thing and we want to set the example as a city, but we also understand that there may be a need to use some of that reclaimed water. So looking for any guidance that you can give us on that as well.
I'm glad you asked that, Kendon. So recycled water is not subject to the same constraints that potable water is. And we don't currently intend to implement a watering day restriction for recycled water. We did shrink the water budgets for water recycling, and we did that by 25%. And the main reason for that is in the summertime, we do have a shortage of recycled water, and we reach a point in the middle of the summer where we sometimes have to add potable water to the system to keep it full. But recycled water is a resource that you can use and lean on and should. And so key areas like parks and your schools, your green belts, you can keep those irrigated with recycled water. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you can stay within that budgeted amount, that would be great, because what that will do is help us in the summertime. And that means irrigating just a little bit less than normal, but it should be enough to support the landscaping in those areas. The other thing that we're doing, and this is just starting, we're working on what we're calling an emergency recycled water distribution system. And essentially, it is a way to, under these emergency conditions, get recycled water to places that currently don't have it. And probably using pretty much any means that we have available to us, including water trucks. So we are looking at that, and that is something that I would be willing to work with you, Kindon, on if it's something that the city would be interested in. And the goal is really to help you support areas of the city that don't have access to recycled water that you want to support, especially trees, perennial landscaping, and that kind of thing. There are probably some limits in what we can do, but we're doing our best to figure out how we can make it work and do it to the extent that we have that resource available.
Thank you. I have probably about 4 or 5 questions. I'll go quickly. I know you've spent a lot of time with us. I just want to respond to what you've just said about reclaimed water and the fact that you do run out of it and you've already shrunk budgets. It seems to me that our city anyway and other cities should refrain from using reclaimed water and not add to another shortage. I think it also sends the wrong message when a city's medians and whatnot, although used claim water, are lush green lawns. That's not the look that we're talking about now and going forward in the future. So I wouldn't agree with that. I think you should be careful with that reclaimed water too, and not just allow us our bad habits to continue. So my questions are quick. Today, the State Water Resources Control Board made a startling announcement, in my mind anyway, back in March 2020, when this mega droughts alarm was ringing. The first year of that drought, water usage throughout the state went up 19%. And this past year, another alarming year, and water usage by the people of California went up another 19%, not down, up. And that really saddens me. And I wonder, can you tell me what Calabasas's rate has been these past 2 years, both either as a city or as within the district, the entire district? Are we as guilty of overusing water during a mega drought? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you for that question. Sorry. So I was working on trying to pull this information together before the meeting, and I wasn't able to get all of the information that I needed, but I'll kind of describe it maybe at a higher level. One thing I would caution is comparing water usage from one year to the next. And it's a little bit unfair to do that because there's a lot of factors that change year to year and which affect water usage. And so when you compare, and we've kind of gotten in this mode where we're comparing to a base year, and 2020 has been the base year. And for example, you look at March of this year compared to March of 2020, we didn't do very well. Our water usage was actually 37% higher. But when you really dig into it, part of the reason was that it was much hotter and drier in March of this year than in 2020. So you look at evapotranspiration rates, that was 41% higher. So you kind of have to caveat everything and look at the differences in weather, temperature, evapotranspiration. But what I will say at a high level is what we saw following the last drought from 2012 to 2016, we saw people respond in an amazing way, including and especially in Calabasas. We saw people reduce their water use by 35%. Now, some of that demand has come back. So we saw really an impressive response. And then we did see a little bit of what you call rebound. We call it demand rebound, where you see demand beginning to return. But we never saw it come back to the pre-drought levels. So we are making progress, and we are seeing that in Calabasas where people are using less water. The question is, how much is that rebound? And, part of what we were seeing in those numbers is some level of rebound. The other thing is water usage is also closely connected to the economy. And, we're primarily a residential community, so we don't see it as much, but you'll see water usage in California does follow economic trends as well. So you really have to kind of dig into the numbers to kind of analyze them. But there's no doubt there's more work to be done. We can be a lot more efficient in our water usage, and we're going to need to be in the coming months and years.
Thank you for that. And I would like to, when you can, look at our facilities specifically to see how we're doing starting March 2020. That's a little narrower, and I know there are some nuances, but we, the city, the local government, is control of those water bills, and it'll be helpful to see. I appreciated that you talked about re-landscaping and ideas and protective zones, and I want to caution people. I saw even at one of our own parks that we have laid down bark. And we know what happened with bark in the Woolsey fire, especially from your property too. It blew all over the place. So we have to be careful that when we do start putting out landscaping recommendations, that we alert people to the dangers of bark. And in fact, hopefully Kendon, I didn't get a chance to tell you, we can look carefully at not doing that. It was a potential disaster. They become flying embers throughout the city. You base your budgets on a certain amount of water and bills being paid. What happens when you have such a significant drop? How do you manage your budget? What kind of cuts could we expect, or what's the plan?
So on our budget, what we did, 9 years ago when I joined the district, is we did recognize the challenge that when we are in a period of drought and our water sales drop dramatically, which they will, that we have difficulty covering our fixed cost. And as part of that, what we have done is sequentially over time, we've slowly shifted our revenue and covered our fixed costs more fully with fixed revenue. So ideally in a business, you would want to cover all of your fixed cost with fixed revenue. That's not quite possible because it would make what we call the meter charge, or the readiness to serve charge, too high. But what we did is we've covered 50% of our fixed cost with fixed revenue. And so what we're able to do is manage through drought without having to raise rates. And that's really helpful. So we will have lower operating costs because we won't be buying as much water. And then we have a rate stabilization fund. It's $9 million. And that fund is used for exactly this purpose. When we're in times of drought and water sales are low, what we will do is draw from that fund, and we'll use that to cover our operating cost so that we don't have to pass on those costs to our customers. So our goal is not to raise rates because of drought.
Wonderful, thank you. I have one last question, and then there's one more speaker, and we'll end it at that. You mentioned that the Metropolitan Water District will be announcing additional restrictions in September. Can you give us a sense of what that might be?
Yeah, so there's two additional levels. One would be what they call a zero outdoor watering, which I think is the same as banning outdoor watering. So it's a little puzzling why they call it zero, but that would be the next step. And then ultimately, the final step, if it was triggered, would be to all of us to be on what is called health and safety deliveries only, which means we would only receive the minimum amount of water that's needed for indoor water usage. Everything that we're doing right now is intended to prevent and forestall that from happening. And really the goal here is to stretch our supply and allow the rainy season to come, which normally starts in October, if things work right, October 15th about, and really bring us into November, even December and January, where we have a lot higher percentage of getting rain and snow in California, and that we can begin to replenish our reservoirs and hopefully come out of this drought.
Well, I think those looming additional restrictions are important for the public to hear, that if we don't take action now, that's what lays ahead. So I will call on our last speaker from the public, Gary Burns.
Gary, please go ahead.
You're muted.
Please unmute yourself, Gary.
I did. It
Oh, there
came
you-
back second time. I wasn't looking. As president of Mulholland Heights for the last 10 years, I have to say that every time everything's going well, I don't hear from anybody. And when there's a problem, we often hear tremendous uproar. When I asked once to have some trees trimmed, I got 40 people to a meeting. David, I think you're going to be overwhelmed by the community who are not at all prepared for what's going to happen. And I went on the water saver section of the website this morning. I couldn't find it. I had to Google the water saver program so that I could find where I was. I don't think the water department is doing enough to bring those of us who live in this area into the knowledge of what's going on, maybe make a works program that urgently finishes up the pure water project, fixes every leak that happens, even if it's a Sunday and somebody's not working. I read a story about a lack of sense of urgency. I understand that. I'm wondering about what's going to happen with pools. My own water saver, and I have drip irrigation over a large portion of my property, and I'm very careful with my showers. I was shocked when I was 154 gallons, and I have to go down to 80. And even I'm not sure, and in the last drought, it was, if it's yellow, let it mellow, I won't finish it. How are we going to achieve this? We have a lot of intelligent people living in this area. We need to bring in some other experts, and we need a program that can move this forward very, very quickly, not just wait for next year's rain, which might not come.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Dave, did you want to respond?
I took down some notes.
Okay.
And, thank you for that comment.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, thank you so much. I think I can speak on behalf of my colleagues that my confidence of you at the helm of this in our water district is very high, and even higher after this evening. So thank you in advance for everything you will do to lead us through this and keep reminding us of what we need to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Council, for your support.
Okay. All right. We also, do we have a proclamation recognizing May 15th to the 21st?
I believe it's going to be displayed on the screen, Madam Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'd like to take this opportunity to celebrate those who are vital to keeping Calabasas on the move and running smoothly. And that's our Public Works team. The American Public Works Association has declared the week of May 15th through the 21st as National Public Works Week. And this theme this year is Ready and Resilient. And that's exactly what public works professionals do for the city and other areas every day. Many times their work is not glamorous, it's not sexy, but if it weren't for the public works pros, so much of our city life as we know it would stop. Public work pros have to be ready at a moment's notice to react and assist as first responders during natural disasters. When heavy rains come, it's our public works teams out there posting barricades, cleaning up the debris flows, all to keep our residents safe. We have our recycling programs, right-of-way management, environmental special events such as Arbor Day and Earth Day celebrations are all handled by our Public Works Department. Everything from pavement you see on the top of a street to the sophisticated network of our storm drains under the street that you don't see, our Public Works team is there ready to make all our lives better. So please join us on this council in celebrating these superheroes. And what a way to segue from our water crisis to our Public Works division, who will be working on this very issue and helping us save our natural resources. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, we have Priscilla Lee with her hand up. Oh, I guess she.
Okay, any of my colleagues wish to add anything? All right, so let's proceed to council announcements. I'll start with Councilmember Bazagian.
Thank you. And I did want to announce, because we won't have a meeting between now and then, that on May 19th, that's a Thursday, from 7 o'clock for about an hour and a half, we are having a young voter night, again, for the California primary election, sponsored by the Mayor's Youth Council. And we will be making a presentation on the ballot and what races are on the ballot and just the process of voting and answering questions. It will be taped and televised at a later time. And Mayor Maurer and myself will be leading that discussion. Thank you.
And it'll be at Founders Hall.
Sorry, it'll be at Founders Hall. I apologize. I keep getting used to Zoom. But yes, it will be live and in person, but it will be taped for later.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that clarification. Councilmember Weintraub, any announcements?
Yes, just that the foundation is having their annual event on June 4th, and they're encouraging everyone in the community who wants to support our schools to come out to this once a year event, and tickets can be purchased at rockthedistrict.org. And again, this event is June 4th, 7 p.m. at Sagebrush, and it is a fundraiser benefiting the students of the Las Virgenes Unified School District.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro?
Thank you. I will just mention again, tomorrow night is the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District's Town Hall event. We all know about that. And next Tuesday night, the 17th at 5 o'clock, is a Zoom conference, Mayor's Youth Council Mental Awareness Month, NAMI, Ending the Silence. So anyone who's interested in that, you can look on our city site and join via Zoom. And I want to take a moment to congratulate Viewpoint that celebrated their 60-year jubilee this past weekend. They are a great partner with the city. And also congratulate the Calabasas High School robotics team that is competing in Dallas in the absolute highest robotics competition there is, the nationals, some international competition there as well. So congratulations to Mr. Young and all those Calabasas students and parents for that incredible accomplishment.
That is good news. I want to add a little more detail about the mental illness presentation next week. May is Mental Illness Awareness Month, and the Mayor's Youth Council's Subcommittee on Wellness has decided to work with the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. This is a nationwide organization that advocates on behalf of individuals and families of someone they know and love suffering from mental illness. This particular presentation is called Ending the Silence, and it really focuses on young adult, teen and young adult suicide in particular. I'll read you a brief description because we're encouraging not only teenagers and young adults to watch, but also their parents. So Ending the Silence is a presentation designed to give students and parents an opportunity to learn about symptoms and indicators of mental illness. And they're given ideas about how to help themselves, friends, or family members who may be in need of support. The presentation also includes personal testimony about a young adult's journey to recovery from a mental illness. I'm really proud of the Mayor's Youth Council's Wellness Committee and the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill for helping support this invaluable discussion. I will note that there was a story this week about teen suicide attempts and the fact that there are not enough psychiatric treatment facilities for them, and that they are spending their times as they wait for an opening in emergency rooms in hospitals throughout America. This is absolutely a crisis, and I encourage people to go to our website to find the link and watch it. Again, that's next Tuesday, May 17th, 5 p.m. It's on Zoom, and the link is on our city's website. Well, thank you very much. All right, I see Councilmember Crowe.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement for the Chamber of Commerce, which will also be on May 19th, but at 7:30 a.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn. You can register with the Calabasas Chamber. That's your breakfast networking meeting. And I also wanted to draw your attention to your mail-in ballots that many of us have received this week. We talked at previous council meetings about the new district lines that were drawn. If you're curious as you're looking at your ballot, if you were with us here in District 45 and represented by Jesse Gabriel, you're now in District 42. If you were represented by District 27, Senator Henry Stern, you're now in District 24. Some of these lines cross a little bit, so to find them exactly, you can go to wedrawthelinesca.org, put in your address, and it'll tell you all of your local districts. And the third one I want to bring up as well, at your congressional district, District 33, we have been represented by Ted Lieu for quite a while, and we're now in District 26. So if you see a lot of unfamiliar names on your ballot, that's why. And if you haven't found your ballot yet, and you start wondering if it's showing up at your door, everybody should be getting a mail-in ballot. You can find your ballot tracker at lavote.gov.
Wonderful. That was super helpful. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to oral communication and public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public wishing to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have Brian Cameron, and I believe Priscilla Lee also wanted to speak here, but we'll call her when she raises her hand. So Brian is in.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. My name is Brian Cameron. I'm a Calabasas resident. I am the president and co-founder of Emergency Preparedness in Calabasas, a Fire Safe Council. And the reason why I want to talk to the council tonight is that on June 23rd, you met and approved our request for startup funding. So I thought it appropriate, as we're coming up to that anniversary, to let you know what we've been doing for the last 11 months. Legal stuff, we created articles of incorporation. We created our bylaws. We appointed a board of directors. We applied for and finally received our 501c3 letters of determination from the feds and the state of California. We defined our structure. We have three elements: wildfire mitigation, earthquake prep and recovery, and ECHO, emergency communications to homeowners. It's a resilient communication platform that you'll be hearing more about. Since we couldn't do it all ourselves, we teamed up early on. We teamed up with the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains, California Fire Safe Council. We are working with Interop 22 and potentially through LVMWD. Along the way, we grew from 3 to more than 20 volunteers. We contracted with GoDaddy to build our website. So what are we doing now? Well, we're doing home ignition zone evaluations. EPIC has done 25 of them so far. RCD has done another 43. There's many, many more to go. Outreach. We've made presentations at the Pumpkin Festival, the Earth Day, at the CPHA Emergency Prep Drill. We're doing group presentations. We've done Mulholland Heights HOA, the Greater Mulwood HOA, Calabasas Highlands, and upcoming, we're doing the neighborhood group meeting on Thursday and the CPHA annual meeting. We've been doing grant writing. Practice makes perfect, and God, I hope I get perfect soon because this is painful. What are our current goals? We're working with the city in the execution of the Mobile Emergency Operations Center and tying it into ECHO. We're continuing group presentations and home ignition zone evaluation engagements. And we're also doing fundraising. And finally, we're teaming up with the city on the app, which hopefully Mike Stahl has joined us and will be able to comment. But otherwise, thank you very much for your support. We love you guys.
Sounds like a lot of great work there. Brian Cameron. All right, I see Priscilla Lee followed by Michael Stahl.
Go ahead, Priscilla. You need to unmute yourself, please. Priscilla.
We can't hear you.
She's muted and I don't know that she can unmute herself. Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Priscilla.
My name is Priscilla Lee and I live in Calabasas. So I like to request that the council consider action my situation with the direct weather conditions and his into the fires in Calabasas and the surrounding areas. So specifically, one of the actions that could be considered might be trimming cypress trees or removing cypress within 115 feet of
Priscilla,
ways, which is often suggested.
Priscilla, you have a poor,
Yes.
you have a poor connection. Can you move or do anything? Otherwise, you can proceed. But it's
Yes, I'll go upstairs. Wait just a second. Okay, I'll try to run upstairs. Not something a senior citizen likes to do, but okay. So cypress trees, as we know, are very prone to catching embers when there are fires. And many of the residents in Calabasas have cypress trees growing near their houses or certainly within 100 feet of structures. Can you hear me better now?
yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So it's often suggested that to protect structures to either cut back or remove cypress trees within 100 feet of the structures. So certainly they're not native plants. And if a cypress tree must be maintained within 100 feet of structures, trimming would be helpful to reduce the associated wildfire hazard. So given the fact that the pandemic has certainly impacted residents financially, please consider helping residents and in essence, aiding the safety of our city by planning to add removing or trimming cypress trees on the on personal property to the city budget considerations. Certainly fighting wildfires consumes a huge amount of water. So that is something that would help mitigate having wildfires spread in Calabasas. Thank you for Mr. Peterson for your presentation. And thank you for letting us speak virtually.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Michael Stahl?
How about now? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, shot clock can start. My name is Michael Stahl. I have been a Calabasas resident for 31 years. I am an EPIC member and head of the earthquake preparedness. We at EPIC are very thankful for the city's support and look forward in the future to explore ways that we can help work hand in hand with the city on emergency preparedness. To that end, I am here to advocate that after obtaining a mobile EOC, the city fund an emergency app from the Woolsey fire proceeds. EPIC and city are pulling on the same rope and our interests are aligned. We both understand that if we can educate our citizens to be more resilient before wildfires and earthquakes, we diminish the demands that will be placed on the city, state, and federal agencies. A phone-based app is the best way to provide education to the end user in the most cost-effective manner. This is very important. There are two types of information that are housed on the app. One which is continuously updated and requires an internet connection. This is like your weather app. It always is going and updating. The other form of information is that it remains embedded without internet conductivity. So everybody agrees that that following an earthquake, electric, cellular, water, gas, and internet will be out for 3 to 5 days. What we are advocating is taking the same information that is contained in this publication, which is outdated. I can't see if you see this, but that's what that is. I think we all recognize this was published. We want you to take this information and place it on an app that would be permanent. Should the power go down and should the internet go down, everybody will have everything that is contained on here in the form of videos, step-by-step guides on how to turn off the water and how to survive for 3 to 5 days. The information that will be permanently embedded on the app is far less expensive to develop, does not require any kind of printing or postage. It is always available 24/7, 365, and can be updated at little to no cost. The city has personnel on staff that have already created an app for another city. Adopting the app will set Calabasas as a forward-thinking city from any other city that I know of in California. We at EPIC want to volunteer to facilitate the creation, editing, planning, and all information contained on the app, working hand in hand with the city for both wildfire and earthquake preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
No more, Madam Mayor.
All right, let's move on to consent items. We have items 1 through 4. Do any of my colleagues wish to pull any of them off?
2 and 4, please.
2 and 4? All right, is there a motion to approve 1 and 3?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Bosajian,
Aye.
Councilmember Kraut,
Aye.
Councilmember Weintraub,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro,
Yes.
Mayor Maurer.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, let's go to item number 2. Councilmember Bosajian?
Yes, this might be a question for the city attorney. So we have this resolution that appears, and under the latest version of the legislative enactments, we have to renew it every 30 days in order to remain remote. However, things keep changing, and we've gone back and forth in what we're going to do, and we now tentatively are coming back in August. However, in person. However, our last meeting is in June, and then we have a July recess. So my question is, what happens if there's some kind of surge where we want to go virtual, but we've made no finding in between the 4th Wednesday in June and the 2nd Wednesday in August? Under the legislative scheme, will we be required to meet in person?
The short answer, I believe, here is no. There are a couple ways this could be accomplished. One, I believe a finding could be made at the August meeting by meeting virtually at the very beginning of the meeting, explaining it. Additionally, this probably could be done through a emergency declaration by the city manager.
Okay, so let's please keep all those things in mind. If we're away throughout July and there's a problem, a health crisis or something, please keep those things in mind. That was my question.
Okay, why don't you go to on item 4?
Item 4 on the attachment A with the resolution, the second whereas paragraph lists abatement costs in the amount of $17,602.70. It is my recollection that we have been dealing with this problem for a couple of years now, including quite a bit of work by the city attorney, our own staff, just looking at these reports and all the descriptions that have been done. I believe that estimate is very low. I want to make sure the city's recovering, because this has been a problem property, that the city is recovering every bit of what it's entitled to recover. Can someone explain to me how that was calculated, and if it includes all the attorney's fees and staff time?
Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. This is Sparky Cohen. I'm the building official for the city. I manage both building and safety and code enforcement. The costs that we're recovering are for the actual abatement process. City attorney time, code enforcement officer's time, and our contractor that physically went in to abate the unlawful structures. The nuisance abatement cost recovery follows our municipal code. And I might have to send an email to Kindon. I'll look it up. But I believe our municipal code parallels state law and the health and safety code. So I understand what your concern is, Councilmember Brazagian. For instance, we've been going at this code enforcement case for a couple years now. We have an immense amount of staff time into this issue, mine included, which is not part of the abatement cost. But our codes and I please don't quote me on this. I'm going to do a little homework and give you a better answer. Won't allow the general staff time to be recovered.
Well, let me stop you right there and ask the city attorney.
Let's say, I'm sorry, I'll finish on this note. This will help a little bit, maybe. Should this property actually be developable? Perhaps it is. It's a postage stamp size property in the middle of a true scenic corridor. It's a beautiful area. It has no access and it's on a mountain. So if this property owner wanted to lawfully develop a primary use, we would recover our code enforcement time at that point. We would add that to the permit fees. But since common sense is leading us to there'll be nothing but vacant land on this structure when he's done, unfortunately, we won't recover those costs.
See, I look at the statute a little differently. Maybe the deputy city attorney can shed some light on this. We've had some very long memoranda and a lot of city attorney time on this one property for years. Yes. I believe all that's recoverable under the ordinance. Why wouldn't it be as part of the ongoing code enforcement? Because this is one big code enforcement case that was never resolved. I just don't want to approve a resolution and then find out that we could have made a lot larger recovery, but we forfeit it by approving the resolution. So let me ask the deputy city attorney what his opinion is.
Yeah, it's my understanding from, and I believe this is chapter 17.80.080, that the city can recover for staff time if it determines that no permit is going to be required to remedy the situation here.
Okay, then what I'd like to do is not pass this tonight and have a recalculation so that we don't forfeit that money. I don't want to belabor the point tonight. Is that okay to do?
Understood.
Go back several years worth of all staff time, including the city attorney, and I think it's going to be closer to $50,000.
So, Effie, how do I table this? Do we, item number 4, what do we do? I mean, do we not table it? Do we delay this for another meeting?
Yeah, a motion here to either could be the next meeting or a date uncertain to allow staff and city attorney's office the time to collect that information that Councilmember Brazagian requested would be appropriate.
Motion to table.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please roll call for this is item 4.
Councilmember Brazagian.
Aye.
Councilmember Kraut.
Aye.
Councilmember Weintraub.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Yes.
Mayor Maurer.
Yes. Okay, can
Motion
we have a
carries.
motion and for item 2?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve item 2.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, proceed with the vote, please.
Councilmember Brazagian.
Aye.
Councilmember Kraut.
Aye.
Councilmember Weintraub.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Yes.
Mayor Maurer.
Yes.
Carries.
All right. Do any council members request a break of any time before we get on with the budget item?
I think now would be a natural time to take a break because instead of just in the middle of the budget item.
It's 8:18. How about 8:25? That's 7 minutes. Okay. And IT people, you will put us on mute. Thank you. All right, well, welcome back from our break. We're going to go on to new business, item 5 for fiscal years 2022 and 2023, and the 2023-2024 budget introduction. And presenting this evening is Ron Allers. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to pass it off to Kendon to start us off with some introductory comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, for the opportunity to discuss the budget with you tonight. As staff, we are trying to do a few things that different, both last year, this year, and upcoming years with the budget. And what we're doing tonight is an introduction to the budget, and Ron and I will talk about that a little bit more as we get into the presentation. In our municipal code, it refers to the budget document as the city manager's budget. And so this is a proposed or a budget coming from the city manager's office. I do note that Ron and his team, Hiromi and others, are instrumental in developing this budget document, and the departments have all collaborated as well in presenting their needs and also their budgets for their departments. One of the things that we did last year that was not what we wanted to do, but we started the budget process late. Part of that was as a result of me not starting until March. And so I did not have the opportunity to work with Ron and other department directors on the budget until my arrival. And because of that, unfortunately, council, we didn't get a budget to you until June. We handed, in essence, handed you a document, and then the next meeting really asked you to approve that. And we heard loud and clear from you, council, that we didn't want to have that happen again. And please note that staff does not want to ever see that happen again either. That's not the best practice. What we're doing tonight is we provided you and the public with the draft documents. Again, this is just a draft, and it will still go through a couple of iterations as we work on this. The effort to get the documents out earlier is, in our hopes, a way of allowing you to have ample time to review these documents and email Ron and I questions so we can start delving into those questions or being more prepared at our upcoming budget discussions throughout May and throughout June to have those answers for you. One of the things that is also different that we're doing this year is the budget represents the council's fiscal policy for a year. And so each of you as council members are seeing this budget all together. So this budget was not presented and vetted through the budget subcommittee. You as the 5 have received it all at the same time and are then able to comment and make recommendations as a council instead of just the budget subcommittee. Now, I do note that the budget subcommittee has been working on a number of other issues that are related to the budget and related to our fiscal health and sustainability. And we'll be talking about those at our special meeting next week, specifically talking about our PERS unfunded liability, our OPEB, which is our other post-employment benefit liability. And then we'll also talk about a deferred maintenance fund and look at our capital improvement budget or capital improvement plan. This will be the first time that we're able to submit to council a 5-year plan of capital projects looking ahead. This is an important document, and Ron and I will talk more about it a little bit tonight, but really go into detail next week when we discuss this. This gives the council a wonderful snapshot of those projects that need to happen over the next 5 years. It's a dynamic document because it will change. We might find, for example, that something that is programmed in year 5, all of a sudden there is grant funding available for a certain project. And so we would apply for that funding and might be able to move that specific project to year 2 or 3. And so, and again, it's a dynamic document, meaning it's our best analysis of those costs that are coming, but it could be fluid in the sense that we might move projects back and forth. There might be projects on the document that would be pushed out if funding's not available. And each year we'll be adding, again, another year to this. So we'll drop off 1 year, add another year, and so you'll be able to have that 5-year look ahead on that. One of the things that this budget does is it presents a balanced budget to the city council. That's important to staff. It's important to the council that we start with that. It does not include some of the requests that have come in since. So for example, staff has already started to receive requests from different entities and different organizations in the community for either additional funding that they already received that from on top of what they received from the council, or perhaps new funding. And that, just in our public comments, we had some requests from members of EPIC to look at ways that other expenditures might be looked at for this next year. This budget does not include that. It does include our work plan. So we've been working over the last several months on our strategic plan and our work plan. Those costs are embedded into this document either as capital projects or as operational costs. They're not line item out, but they're in there. And so we'll be coming back with the final work plan, which will show those individual amounts, but we've forecasted those into the budget to take that into consideration. So with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Ron. Again, our purpose tonight is to give a very brief and broad overview of this proposed budget, how it might differ a little bit from our current budget, what we're looking at and revenues and expenses, and then go from there. And Mayor, what we'd really like to do is, at your discretion, is hear the council on questions tonight and then come back prepared with answers on the May 25th or May 18th or the May 25th meeting, depending on the nature of those questions. If there's some that Ron would like to answer tonight, or I can help out and answer, we can do those. But again, we'd really like to provide more in-depth and thorough answers based on the comments that come from tonight's discussion.
Understood. I think that if you're able to answer them, that's a great idea, especially if we have members of the public that have questions too, rather than ask them to wait another week. But certainly if it's a more detailed explanation, I think everyone would understand that. All right, well, thank you for that introduction. And I do want to just kind of emphasize that what's happening here tonight is pretty unusual in the history of the city of Calabasas to have an early look at a budget. We're only in May, and there's time to make adjustments. In the past, there's just been a very rapid process with little input from the public or the other non-budgetary council members. I do want to thank Councilmember Kraut and Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro, our two budget liaisons, for the work you've done on this with staff as well. And take it away, Rod.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation this evening to give an overview of the budget. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So tonight we are going to be presenting the budget to the City Council and to the public, and we can answer any questions that the council and the public may have, but it's really a presentation of the budget and for the council and the public to review the budget in the coming weeks. And then as we go through and dissect different portions of the budget. So our schedule of future meetings are next week on May 18th. We will talk about our pension unfunded accrued liability, as Kindon mentioned, as well as our OPEB liability. That liability is for our retiree medical costs. We will talk about setting up an Internal Revenue Code Section 115 trust and that presentation next week, and then delve into our capital projects. We have presented to the council a 5-year capital plan with projects that will be funded next year, as well as in year 2, 3, 4, and 5, to give council a look ahead of future projects and the projects that will take longer than 1 year to complete, whether that be 3 years or 4 years, and provide that plan to the council, which is also in the packet that you received. And then also talk about setting up a new fund. We have not yet firmly decided on the name. So we will probably call it a deferred maintenance fund. I have here on the slide equipment maintenance fund, but we'll probably change it to be more deferred maintenance, and we'll talk about that at our May 18th meeting. The next meeting on the 25th, we will delve into the budget in detail, the operational budget, specific line items, whatever the council would like to talk about, whether that be salary and benefits, operations and maintenance, our capital outlay. We can also continue to focus on our capital projects from the prior week and delve into more specifics on each capital project or whichever project the council would like to discuss, or the public. On June 8th, if we need this meeting, then we can continue discussion on the budget. We can finalize all the direction from the city council as regard to changes to the budget, up or down, or dealing with those CIP projects, either moving some farther out or moving those that are in year 3 or 2 and you want them sooner. However way that direction goes, we can finalize that hopefully on June 8th. And then on June 22nd, we will present the budget in its entirety for adoption. And as the council is well aware, that's multiple things that need to be adopted. It is the operation budget. It is our capital improvement program budget. We will have a salary resolution in there and our GAN initiative. And then that whole package will be adopted by the council so that we are all set for the coming new year, which begins on July 1. With that, I will go hopefully quickly through our general fund and then an overview of the entire city, and then open it up for council consideration and council questions and discussion. Here is our general fund revenues. You'll see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different line items for our revenues. These are our major revenues from property taxes, sales tax, franchise fees, so forth. You see here 2 prior year actual numbers. I know that I don't necessarily need to remind the council, but the economic shutdown and what we've gone through the last 2 years all began in March of 2020. So that far left-hand column that says 2019-20, that was kind of a normal year for 8.5 months, and then was the beginning of the shutdown for 3.5 months. So we're not looking at any what I'll call normal years without the pandemic. 2021 actuals as well, our current year budget, our revised estimate, and then the far right-hand column, which is the proposed budget. So you see that next year in that far right-hand column, we are estimating for the general fund total revenues of $25,363,000 and change, broken down by these revenue categories. Property taxes continue to go up to 4.4 million, sales tax at 7.4 million, franchise fees at 855,000, on down transient occupancy tax, which is known as our hotel bed tax, at 2 million, and so forth. So that's, and then all the revenues add up to that $25.363 million for next year. All the details are in the packet that you received tonight. Our expenses are over 2 charts broken down by our different departments and different functions that are in the general fund. I will not go through this line item by line item, but again, it gives you the history of the last 2 years of actuals, our current year budget, our revised estimate, given that we're almost done with the fiscal year. We got another month and a half, and then our proposed budget for next year. You will see that our total expenditure for next year is in the far right-hand column, excuse me, and the total is $25,325,000. As Kindon mentioned, we are estimating a balanced budget with a very small surplus for next year in the general fund. If I would summarize it, it is on this slide. You'll notice that in the left-hand column again, Under surplus deficit, which is about 3/4 of the way down the slide, you'll see the estimated surplus for next year at 37,908. So again, a small surplus. It's a balanced budget. If we go one column to the right under revised estimate for this current year, you'll see that we're estimating about $700,000 in a surplus for this fiscal year. That's due to sales tax coming in higher. We've had a number of salary vacancies this year, so that's reflected in expenditures that are less. And so that good year in that we will have a surplus of about $700,000. You'll see on the very bottom row, the fund balance or ending fund balance for the general fund. These are our general fund reserves, quote unquote. And this year we're estimating to finish at $13,370,000. And next year, basically finishing at close enough to that dollar amount, $13,408,000. So our ending general fund reserves goes up a little bit. So that's kind of our general fund overview for the city and for next fiscal year. One last slide. This is our total city. So this is every fund of the city. So it's our general fund, all of our landscape maintenance district funds, our library fund, tennis and swim center is in here, as well as all of our transportation funds, Prop A, Prop C, Measure R, Measure M, gas tax, our debt service funds that we have, both CFDs as well as this city debt, and all the other miscellaneous grant funds and other operating funds of the city. So again, 2 years worth of actuals, this year's budget revised estimate. You'll notice in that far right-hand column for next fiscal year, total revenues of 65, almost 66 million, total expenditures of 70.7 million. So you see a deficit or red numbers of 4.7 million. What this is our investment in capital infrastructure. If you notice as you look through the 5-year CIP plan, we have about $14 million that we are programming in next year's total capital program. So that investment in our capital is reflected in this negative number of 4.7. So we're not spending the money on operations and all this money on operations and capital. We're actually investing $14 million in capital, whether that be playground equipment or investment in our roads and streets through Prop A and C, and other investments in our parks, whether it be upgrade to park infrastructure, parking the surface lots for those parks that we have in the city, or investing in our own information technology as we purchase new software. All of that are investment dollars that make up that 14 million. So again, this deficit of 4.7 million is not all on operations. There's a good chunk that is invested in capital. And I believe that is my last slide, and it is. I just wanted to state this is the city manager's recommended budget to the council, and this is for presentation to the council, and we're happy to answer any and all questions that you may have or that the public can have. But we have future meetings so that the council can digest this and take their time over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and be able to ask questions and delve into all the details and whatever the council so desires. So with that, I am ready to receive and answer any questions the city council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. That's a lot of good news in there. I'm going to start with our two budget subcommittee members. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Thank you. And I do want to thank Peter, Kindon, and Ron, and all your department staff as well in the city for the excellent work they've been putting in bringing this to council. We have asked multitudes of questions and had good debates the four of us, which is a good thing on a lot of these items, at least some of them. The only question I wanted to clarify, at least at this point quickly, was on the surplus deficit of 4 million. Let me get it exactly right. So you're on the page, which you show is 4,768,411. In addition to that number, we will be getting back some of those monies, correct, from grants, various prop and measure funds, especially for infrastructure and road work, correct, in the coming years?
Yes, some of the grants, it does take a little bit of time in getting back that money. So right, so those that are more time delayed are not necessarily shown in here as revenue. Some are instant, and so that's reflected in here. But you're correct, Councilmember Shapiro.
Okay, and in spite of my constant indicating to everyone who listens that I am extremely cautious, and I want to be cautious and protect the city in the future, I do want to indicate I appreciate all your hard work efforts. I will leave questioning for the rest of my colleagues at this point, because I'm really appreciative of what you brought here today so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kraut.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro. It has been a pleasure working with you. Thank you, Ron and Kendon, for all of your hard work. It's also been quite a pleasure and an experience working with you two as well. I want to share with the public what this has been like. First of all, our Ron and your entire department, the presentation got to City Council a week early, which is fantastic. That's what we've always been looking for, is let's get that information so that our council has a chance to review it. Not only did the presentation and everything get to us a week early, but we're breaking this down into several meetings so that we have an opportunity to dig into these details. And I think this is just amazing. And the public needs to realize what a Herculean effort this is to put all of this together, and to do it early so that we have time to discuss it and review it is just is fantastic. I know we had a last minute update. In the future, I'd just like to say, let's highlight those updates so that we can, just hone in on the minor updates that we are inevitably going to get before these meetings. I mean, the extra stuff that you put in here, like the capital improvement plan, I think it's just great information for everybody who's looking at it. I do also want to share in our budget subcommittee, we have 4 completely diverse opinions. And what a great committee to work with. Ron is extremely financially savvy. Our city manager obviously brings a lot of wisdom with him. David and I look at financial numbers a little differently, and so it's created a lot of lively debate. And I think, Ron, would you scroll back to that? I think it's our first slide on income for the general fund revenues there. This is where we had to start. Can anybody guess how much money's coming in next year? What's going to happen with the potential for a recession? What's going to happen with TOT, with our hotels? I mean, the Cambria Hotel, the Hilton Garden Inn, the new rooms over there, the Goodnight Inn, the rooms being repaired. How do you guess at what these numbers are? So I just want everybody to see that with this starting point, we had 100 opinions going into this, and we're able to come up with some numbers. And then once we realized how much revenue is coming in, then we could look at how much we had to spend. So a lot of hard work went into that. The one last thing I really think I should ask rather than mention, just to make sure I've got it right. Ron, we looked at a cost of living adjustment for staff. Is that in this budget, and where and how much is that?
Thank you, Councilmember Kraut. Yes, the cost of living adjustment isn't included in the budget. It is included at a 5.35% increase. And it's here under this line item called personnel services that you see almost in the middle of the slide. And if you go across, that you will see the proposed budget showing at $10,062,000 for the general fund only. There are staff that are paid for out of other funds of the city, but the vast majority of the city staff is paid out of the general fund, and that's a little over 10 million.
And that 10 million that we have is very close to the 9.7 million from 2019, 2020. How did that work out? I mean, how did we drop money and then come back to about the same number after giving the cost of living increase?
Good question, Councilmember Kraut. We've actually had a decent amount of staff turnover the last couple of years. So, and that includes retirements as well. So those retired employees, they leave at the top end of their salary range, and they are replaced with new staff or promoted staff. And those new staff, promoted staff, generally start at a much lower salary. They may even start at step one or the bottom end of the range. They may start somewhere in the middle, but there's a lot of salary savings when retired staff leave, or even current staff that quit, go on to a position at another city or another company, and we hire from the outside. So that's a lot of salary savings that we experience. And then the increases is not only increased costs for salary, but we do have increased costs for our retirement in CalPERS, as well as our medical insurance benefits as well.
Great, thank you. And I think for the public, it's important to know that our cost of living increase for our staff was essential, one, to keep up with the hardships that people are seeing with the inflation that we're running through right now. And it's also important for us to be competitive when we're hiring those new staff positions, that we're paying a rate that's on par with the other cities in our area. I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. There is no cost of living adjustment to city council in there. Is that correct?
Correct.
And one of the things that was brought up by myself at our budget subcommittee was that we look at the staff cost of living adjustment annually, which we should be doing. I would like to see, and our budget subcommittee is recommending, that we proceduralize looking at the council COLA every 2 years so that it does not become a hot button topic. Not saying that I would recommend that we do a cost of living adjustment for council every year, but if we proceduralize when it happens, it takes the politics out of it. And that was a recommendation that I made, and I believe I'm fully supported by our budget subcommittee. That's an item for a future agenda if we have support of that. And after that comment, I will just let it go to the rest of our council.
Well, thank you. I will ask Councilmember Weintraub.
Thank you, and thank you to our budget subcommittee, Ron and Kindon. I just wanted to know, and I've been listening to all the questions and comments, so I don't need to go over that. But Ron, what are the concerns for our budget over the next few years? I mean, just taking away, looking at the charts, just hearing from you, like what are areas that we should be concerned with as we look ahead?
I think we're making very good strides in our budget with actually producing the 5-year capital. We need to have, and what's programmed into our capital program is an assessment of all our capital infrastructure here at the city. We need to actually have a much firmer number to go, hey, we need to replace whatever playground equipment. We need to replace water pipes, sewer pipes that the city owns from our buildings, or roof, or whatever it is that's in need of repair. So that capital assessment that we are going to embark on next fiscal year is critical, because while we have a decent understanding of it, we need to put numbers or cost to those items so that we can program a roof replacement or whatever it may be at all the different buildings that the city owns and medians and so forth that the city has. The other concern I have deals with retirement. PERS is notoriously, historically, underestimate the future cost of what they will require the city to pay. And that'll be at our next meeting on discussing our unfunded PERS liability as well as our retiree medical. So those are the two main things that I am concerned about as we look into the near future. I'll call it, 0 to 5-6 years out from that. Those are the costs that can really hamper our city budget or decrease the city council ability to make adjustments and so forth, because we have no say with the gorilla in the room of CalPERS. We have to pay them what they tell us.
Yes, Mike, and just following up, we saw on a very, very small scale that all of a sudden our playground equipment wasn't safe, and we need to reinvest in that. And where does that money really wasn't allocated to do all of these upgrades? So you're saying, look, right now, say there's a huge pipe burst in the city, where is that money coming from?
We do have our general fund reserves. We do have other unencumbered funds, whether that be from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds. So we do have reserves that are there for these unexpected events if we would have something sudden come up. So the city has done a good job of building up those reserves since its inception 31 years ago. So all that is good. I'll just go back to, we really need a plan with numbers on the status of all of our assets so that we can see, are we ahead? Are we behind? Is there something big coming up in year 4, year 5, as far as a dollar cost that we're not necessarily aware of right now? I don't know. The capital assessment will bring all that to light once that is.
I think that's really important, because as we continue to age, everything along in the city will age as well, and it's definitely something that we need to plan for. So, and the CalPERS situation, in other communities, you see city budgets actually going bankrupt because of liability responsibilities to CalPERS. So I'm glad we're focusing on those two big issues. I think they're really fundamental to the health of our budget. So thank you. And again, thanks to the subcommittee.
And Councilmember Weintraub, if I could add to that as well, you hit that spot on, and thank you, Ron, for that answer. One of the items that we do have in our CIP, and we'll talk more about this next week in our meeting, John Bingham and Erica Green have been working on developing an RFP to do a full capital needs assessment. What this would do is would bring in an outside firm, a group, to look at all of our city facilities and look years out. And so what we would have is the 5-year plan, but that assessment, that study, would also help us know when we need to replace the roof at Tennyson Swim Center, when our air conditioning systems need to be replaced at City Hall and the library, and give us a cost for that. So we'll have 5 years always looking ahead, but beyond that, we'll have probably another 10 years out of potential cost, 10 to 15 years of potential cost coming up, so we can start anticipating those. And it really comes back to proper planning. One of the things that each of you as council members, when you interviewed me over a year and a half ago, asked about the financial health of the city and what I saw going forward. And some of these things were already in discussion, and you'd have these at the forefront of your minds as well. But I think part of those discussion rested on, planning for capital projects, and then addressing the PERS and the OPEB liabilities, creating a plan for those. And so at our next week's meeting, we'll spend a lengthy amount of time giving council and the public a background on why there is an unfunded liability, how that came about, And then we'll talk about the recommendation from the budget subcommittee, which, as both David and Peter mentioned, two very different opinions and very different from Ron. And so I've had to, push the three back into their corners at different times and then bring them all back together to come to a different meeting after the questions have, come in. But I think what we're be able to present is something that is good for the city, good for the community, and looking forward, to prepare for that future.
Any other questions, Councilmember Weintraub? Okay, we'll go on to Councilmember Bazagian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple questions only, and let's start out by going to the general fund expenses slide, which you have up. Sheriff's Department is a little over $5 million. Ron, does that total include the liability trust fund amount?
Yes, it's staying at the 11% charge that it currently is.
But that $5 million includes that.
Correct.
Okay, I think you may be getting a surcharge increase of a significant amount very soon. I don't know if it would, it won't affect this upcoming budget, but it's just something to keep in mind for the future that, it's now at 11%. I would expect it to creep up. The fire department, the fire district, there should probably, I don't know, in your detailed budget report, you should probably put an asterisk so that people understand that's not what we're paying the $20,000 for fire services. That's something totally different, that the fire services come out of the property taxes. And the reason I say that is you could look at that and get totally misled because the sheriff's department's the whole contract, the fire department's from another source. So maybe that could be explained somewhere so that people understand that. The other comment I would have is that I'm glad Peter mentioned the council salaries. I don't have a problem discussing it every 2 years in conjunction with the budget conversation, which is how it should be framed, and to put it in context. I also would look at, since 2003, we have had the same $5,000 office holder account amount. Expenses have gone way up. We are required, if we want to be good council members, to do a lot of things in the community and outside the community. Those of us who serve on other boards and commissions we're having to start paying out of pocket for a while. And I think that number should go from 5,000 a little bit higher because it's been 20 years basically almost. I noticed that in a future budget, you had it go up to like 5,200. But I think for this next year, I would hope that we would do something different where we would exclude certain things when you're representing the city or just make it a higher number. And those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a few comments as well. Thank you all again for the work you've done on this budget to date. The work plan that we recently approved and the projects and their budget items, those will be coming to us separately, but are they already reflected here in these numbers?
Yes, some of the work plan items are reflected and they are showing up in some of the capital projects, Mayor, as well as some of the other ones are operationally based and they are in conjunction with other operating costs. So they don't have, you can't turn to a specific page and go, oh, here it is. It's included along with other costs in those departments. So there are some work items that have not been budgeted because we don't know, we can't estimate a decent cost at this point in time. So we will be coming back to council with that in the future. So in the probably the early months of next fiscal year with those.
You'll be coming back to us with the budgets for each of the projects?
not for each of the projects, but the ones that we don't necessarily have
Okay.
a decent estimate on at this point in time, and we need to gather more data and more information and then return to council.
And so, Kendon, did you envision a place that one could go to see how the project, well, is funded, what the scope of work of each project, and a way to track it?
Yeah.
And if so, would it be a part of this budget? Would it be a separate report? I mean, what is it? How can we track the expenses if it goes over or under? And if it's, how do we hold staff accountable on the work plan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the first step is we'll be bringing back a final work plan document. And that work plan will include estimates at this point of what we think each of those activities will cost. As we've mentioned to the council and to the public, our intent is to bring this document back to the council every 3 to 4 months to do a status report on the action items. But we will also have a dedicated page on our website where the people from the community, residents, could pull up that page and look at the work plan and see what are the action items and what is being done and the status of those.
Well, I think that'd be great. Okay, thank you. And then is there a line item here? I didn't see one, and maybe it's in the 5-year capital plan for the Agora Hills Calabasas Community Center?
No. So yeah, Mayor, this is one of the areas that the budget is silent on. And once we have more of an understanding of the direction that the community center will go, that would require a budget amendment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Ron, this question is for you. I know, gosh, when you started this budget, of course, it was a couple years ago, and then you updated it. And here we are today with 2021, 22 closing out, 22, 23 around the corner. At the beginning of the process, I don't think you ever imagined that there would be a global war and an economic, a global boycott and inflation run amok. I mean, is this reflected anywhere in your budget, or are you anticipating that? And do you have a contingency plan, or just revise as we go? What are your thoughts in those large scale, unmanageable, I mean, something out of our control?
So we have thank you, Mayor Maurer, we have increased certain costs, as we already talked about for, personnel services. We anticipated, increases in certain costs there. We've also increased different training budgets in the departments, as well as for different operating costs, whether that be for utilities, electric, water, so forth. And so there are inflationary cost increases that are reflected in this year's budget. And I'll admit they are estimates. I could not predict that we would be sitting here at 8.5% inflation even 6 months ago. I would not have predicted that. So that being said, I don't know if we're going to be 6 months from now at 15% inflation, or if we're going to be at our 8. So all that being said, we have increased cost here in the budget that we know of, and other ones that we have estimated given our data now. But you are correct. The unknowns are there. We do have a very small surplus in the general fund that I mentioned of $37,000. So that can, help absorb some costs. And when we estimate all of our personnel services, we estimate being fully staffed for a full 12 months for every position in the city. And and the council knows that isn't going to happen. We will have staff turnover where people will quit or retire, or something will happen where staff will leave the organization. So we'll always have salary savings just because of vacancies, and those, basically create our surplus. Like our surplus of 700,000 this year is a combination of revenues that came in higher than our estimates, i.e. sales tax, as well as expenses being lower, our salary savings from vacancies that occurred during the year. So I think we're fine, Mayor Maurer, as far as the general fund is concerned, because we have estimated different cost increases here.
Thank you for that. Just one last quick question. Do we have a policy on salary savings? Do we require positions to be open for any amount of time in order to accrue those savings?
No, we do not. When Kendon's been here 14 months now, and when we've had different vacancies arrive in the departments, he does ask questions and query the department head on, do we need to keep this position? Can we, somehow, either reallocate or consolidate positions or what have you? So we are looking at each position as a vacancy occurs to see if we could, save money or modify the duties or absorb it somehow among the existing staff, which is all good and should be done with each vacancy that happens. And then a determination gets made on whether to recruit for that vacancy or let it sit vacant for a little while, and we continue that discussion.
Okay, thank you. That was it for me. I don't think there's anyone else with any hands up. Do you have any closing?
Mayor, before you go on to Mayor Pro Tem, who has his hands up, I think Ron handled that last question very delicately and very politically. I think if the truth be told, the directors do not like me because I ask those tough questions about any vacancy. Anytime that there's somebody that naturally moves on to another position or retires or whatever it is, we have very honest conversations about filling that position and looking at the long-term organization. And so I thank the directors for letting me be persistent in that. It's important for me to ask those questions.
Thank you. Do you have any other closing comments? You were wrong.
I know that the Mayor Pro Tem has his hand up.
Oh, David.
Thank you. Just two quick items. First, appreciate all your comments and questions, Mayor Maurer. I agree with some of your last few comments, and I did want to indicate, yes, I do support Peter's recommendation that this come to council for discussion, and as well, James's comments, whether it is something that comes from the protocols committee to council or the budget committee to council. Either way, I think it's a discussion that is worth having as well. And last but not least, I want to indicate that I have gotten a lot of notes and letters. It's already been raised, so I will raise it. The fact that we have a number of parks currently not in use because of large repairs that need to be done is something that should never happen in the city, and where Peter and I and Ron and Kendon are working very hard to make sure there are funds, that there are that each department has a concept of what the future maintenance will be required, so we don't have situations that come upon us like this. And if they do, they're minimal and we are prepared for them. And that's something I know that'll be coming forward as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, hearing no more comments, seeing no more hands, we'll be moving on.
And Mayor, before we go on, if I could just add a couple of things. The council members, again, we have a discussion planned next week on Wednesday on the PERS, the OPEB, and the CIP. For the 25th, the May 25th meeting, if there are any specific questions that you have on the detailed side of the budget, please feel free to email Ron and I. Also, if there's different data sets that you would like to see, charts or graphs or histories or whatever that might be that we haven't shared tonight, please let us know and we'll work that into the presentation. and the discussion on the 25th or in the first meeting in June, depending on the timing of that. Our goal is to, again, council, to provide you with a tool that you're comfortable with. This is your policy. This is your tool. We've also have a goal to be more transparent with our budget for the community. They should be able to go to that budget document and find the numbers that they're looking for. We're doing that incrementally over the next couple of years with changes that Ron and the staff are making and the directors and I are encouraging. But it will also be more visible once we implement our new software. And thank you, council, for authorizing that. We'll have the ability with the new software to really provide a document that is really neat and tidy. I don't know how to say it otherwise, but it will be really detailed, very organized, and we look forward to being able to do that. But again, we want the document to be transparent and for the community to be able to have access to that information that they're looking for.
Thank you. Can I follow up with a question to you? Years ago, we did have software that turned our budget into digital, easy to read, view in pie shapes and charts, different funds, different departments. You could just pretty much put in what you wanted in those in that program. Is that what you're talking about with ease of access to information and different ways? Or is it still going to be pages and pages and pages and pages of tiny print?
It'll be a combination of both. So the software will allow greater use for the graphs, charts, tables, and things like that. But it also will be detailed where you could click on a bigger item and drop down. So for example, I'll use this one for traveling training. So with the new software, we'll be able to say the city manager's office travel and training X amount of dollars. You'll be able to click on it. And then under that, you would see League of California Cities, City Managers Conference. And so it'd be very broken down and very detailed on what is included in that larger number. And so a combination of both. The one thing that Ron didn't go over is we did include in your packet a budget at a glance. This is something that many cities do, and I appreciate Ron and Hiromi and others who worked on this. This is a very simple 2-page, 3-page snapshot of revenues and expenses, both for the general fund and then citywide. And again, once we finalize the budget and on our budget page, we will have this budget as a snapshot page on our website, and then we'll be able to add other things as well that tell that story of our financial situation.
Yes, that was very helpful for print. All right, we're going to move on to item number 6, the check register for the period of April 15th to the 27th of 2022. Are there any questions regarding the check register? I'm not seeing any. We'll move on to task force reports. Could you raise your hand if you have a task force report? All right, and I see Councilmember Kraut, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
I have a number of ones to report. I'll just be really brief about it. I did attend the California Contract Cities Advocacy Day on the 28th with Councilmember Bazagian, and had a chance to hear from a number of our local electeds. And that was followed immediately by the California League of California Cities Transportation, Communication, and Public Works Policy Committee meeting highlights. Sorry, my light went out here. I'm saving energy. The other meetings that we had, including our economic development meetings with Councilmember Weintraub, where we're exploring new opportunities here in the city of Calabasas. And I should report that we are gathering some information on what it would be like to have cannabis businesses in a city. not supporting it or against it, but we're just gathering information at this point in time. Also, you probably can guess that we've had a few budget subcommittee meetings attended by Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro and myself. And I'm thanking everybody that I've had a chance to work with on those. And I'm sure there's more, but that's all that comes to mind right now. So I'll turn it over to my fellow council members.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro.
Thank you. I'll add one. You forgot we attended, Peter and I represented the city, attended Bay Laurel's grand reopening of their library, which was actually really nice. And we got the opportunity to get a little tour of the improvements on the playground and meet some very excited students about government in Calabasas at a young age. Also, council member, let me go on to another, attended a Valley Economic Alliance board meeting, a League of California Cities Policy Committee meeting, which we talked primarily about parks and unhoused individuals and programs for children, especially. I'll provide that to my colleagues when I receive the shortened versions, summary versions. And then I attended this SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments General Assembly, first time in 3 years. We have met in person, the regional council meeting, and I was also elected vice chair of the CHD committee, which works on housing and other issues as well. And I will be sharing something we all appreciate, I know I got, which is our annual city profile from SCAG, which is full of information charts. And I'll share that with council and of course, Kindon. And please feel free to make comments or let me know what you think of it, because they've shortened it a little bit and changed it. And I think they're looking forward to hearing from you what you think of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Weintraub.
Just a update that the city of Calabasas provided grant funding checks to our local schools. So those schools received their checks and are so appreciative of all of the efforts of the city council and the city of Calabasas. So just for the community to know that those checks did go out and the schools are putting the money towards good use. And they're just very appreciative of that. So thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Did you get a report from each city on how they spent the funds? And if so, could you share it with the rest of us, the report?
That report's supposed to go to our CFO.
Ron, could you please share that with us?
We'll get that sent out, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. I will just mention that I attended the inaugural farmers market for the Oaks last week. It's on Wednesdays, and if any other communities would like to have a special event of some sort, you could get a temporary use permit like they did and host your own kind of special events. All right, with that, city manager, do you have anything new to report?
Only one thing to report, Mayor and Council. As you're aware, we were able to select a new captain for our Lost Hills station. This is Lieutenant Jennifer C2, who will be promoted to captain and assumes responsibility for this station, I think as of today. And so we're excited to work with her. I'll be setting up some opportunities for her to meet with you, Mayor, and then also to introduce herself to the council so we can start working with her and her team there. I do want to compliment and express our gratitude to Lieutenant Fender, who did an exceptional job during his interim position at the station, and wish him well in his future endeavors as well.
Could you ask Captain Cito if she could come to one of their next upcoming meetings and the public can meet her as well?
Yes.
Councilmember Weintraub, did you have another announcement?
No, for future agenda items.
Okay. All right. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Councilmember Weintraub.
Yeah, for some time I'd been speaking with Kindon and Matt and did some conversations with the Lost Hill Sheriff Station about an ordinance regarding catalytic converters. So I'd like to request that come up on a future agenda item. The Lost Hill Sheriff Station did some research was actually Acting Captain Fender, who spoke to some of his associates and felt that having a local ordinance on the books would help them in terms of enforcement and deterrence. So it's something that I would like to look at if there's a second.
I
Okay,
would second that.
we'll put that on as an information item. And Councilmember Crowe.
Yeah, thank you. Two items. One, we did discuss this evening the council COLA, and I just want to be clear. In addition to discussing the council COLA, discussing proceduralizing it so that it's an automatically agendized item every 2 years. And then I believe Councilmember Bazagian wanted to add to that we look at the council discretionary account at the same time. And I believe we have support from 3 council members for that, right?
I don't know that it takes 3.
Okay, I'm just reiterating what I heard tonight. One other item, and I think this is extremely important. I would like to ask the city council for a future agenda item in the immediate near future that we form a water task force. And to explain why, I attended the Metropolitan Water District meetings. I have been researching and meeting with other people, including Dave Peterson of our water district and others. And we're in a severe crisis right now, and we are in what should have been a preventable crisis. It was not very well covered this evening, but it should be, that our water district is in a unique place in the water grid, that we are uphill from the Colorado River water and do not have the pumping capacity to move the water here, which is why we're seeing 1 day a week watering, and other parts of LA are seeing 2 days a week of watering, and other parts of LA are going to have 7 days a week of watering. This needs to be brought to the attention of the state of California to get some support for improvements to the state water project and to our Metropolitan Water District to make sure that we have pumping stations capable of creating a redundant water supply here at the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. So I would like to see a water task force formed, empowered to lobby this sort of project with Sacramento and other agencies. And I think it's urgent that we do it now. And I would ask for support to get this on the next agenda.
May I comment? The Sustainability Task Force has looked at water issues and is committed to that area, especially because it ended up as one of our work plan projects, along with open space acquisition under the 30 by 30 plan, which is another sustainable program to preserve waterways and lands, and also food waste. We looked at those 3 work plan projects as part of the sustainability.
I would have to say you're misunderstanding what I'm discussing here. The infrastructure projects that I'm talking about would be at the Metropolitan Water District. We have to get the message out.
I understood what you said, but I think we can cover that. Let us have a chance at it. But I definitely will put it on, but unless you want to be on the Sustainability Task Force, we have discussed briefly water issues, not to your level, but.
And Mayor, if I could just jump in here. Part of this is a discussion that we had with Dave Peterson separate, and it's looking at, I think you're both spot on, and I think that's where there's 2 different conversations happening. Is there's what needs to be done at the city level, what we need to do on our part to conserve water and make changes in how we use water. What Councilmember Crowd is talking about is actions with the state water project. And
I understand what he's talking about. I
Okay.
do. Yes, I don't need it to be re-explained. No, I understand. I said it's going to be on the task. I mean, it's going to be on the agenda, the future agenda, but I don't think we need to duplicate efforts.
Okay, I'll wait for your report.
Thank you. And Councilmember Weintraub.
Just wanted to add, with Peter, I've had those same conversations with Dave, but I also think if and when we ever bring on a lobbyist, those would be efforts that we should work on as well. I mean, it's bigger than Calabasas. I mean, the whole infrastructure and everything you talked about, and it involves working with our other cities as well. So it's also something that the COG should look at too. So maybe, Peter, you could come to one of our next COG meetings and talk about this as well. So I know there's a lot of interest that we've been speaking about at the COG regarding this issue. I mean, it has to be discussed regarding the infrastructure and everything. I totally agree.
I would just say that if this is so very well covered in other committees, I think it's urgently important that we get a full and thorough report of what those committees and other organizations are doing to solve this problem to create a redundant water supply.
No, I'm saying to you that I had those same questions, and my takeaway from Dave is that it's an infrastructure problem, not just a water issue, and that is correct. That it's a much bigger issue than just our little city of Calabasas. That this involves, like, you know, all the city's efforts, and, you know, taking it up with the state. I mean, it's way bigger than just our own little subcommittee. That's all I was trying to say. That I spent time with Dave trying to make sense of this as well. So.
And the COG has a lobbyist, correct?
No.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
okay. Councilmember Basajian?
Just briefly wanted to add about the catalytic converters. When that comes back, I know there's some state legislation that's been proposed that would possibly preempt any ordinances. So please make sure to check that before it just comes back as an ordinance or suggested ordinance. That was to the city attorney.
Okay. Any other comments on future agenda items? Okay. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Basaja,
Aye.
Councilmember Kraut,
Aye.
Councilmember Weintraub,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro,
Yes.
Mayor Maurer.
Yes, and our next meeting
Carries.
is next Wednesday, May 18th at 7 p.m. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.